Have you ever felt a phantom limb? That strange, unnerving sensation of a part of you that is no longer there, yet still aches, still itches, still feels as real as the hand in front of your face. It's a ghost in our own machine, a memory so powerful it convinces the body it's a reality. Our collective history, I believe, has its own phantom limbs. There are futures we were meant to have, worlds that were within our grasp, that now only exist as a faint, persistent ache in the background of our modern lives. A timeline that branched off, leaving us in this one, wondering why things are so difficult, so costly, so broken. We feel the ghost of a better world, a world of clean, boundless energy. A world where devastating diseases were not a death sentence. A world that could withstand the very fires of hell. These aren't fantasies. They are stories, deeply researched and disturbingly plausible, of inventions that were not just lost to time, but were allegedly buried, pushed into the shadows, discredited, and erased. Not by accident, but by design. These are the stories of geniuses who flew too close to the sun, not on wings of wax, but on wings of progress so revolutionary they threatened to burn down the old world order. And for their vision, they were cast out. Their work, the key to our phantom future, was locked away. Tonight, we're not just telling stories. We are performing an excavation. We will dig through the layers of history, rumor, and conspiracy to uncover the blueprints of a world that could have been. We will explore 3 of the most profound and controversial cases of suppressed inventions in modern history. We'll journey back to the dawn of the electrical age, to the laboratory of a man who wanted to give power to the world for free, Nikola Tesla. We'll step into a 1930s San Diego clinic, where a brilliant microbiologist named Royal Raymond Rife claimed he could destroy deadly diseases with nothing more than a beam of light. And finally, we'll enter the humble workshop of a British hairdresser, Maurice Ward, who, in his spare time, created a substance called starlitia material so impossibly heat-resistant it could have redefined safety for all of humanity. Each of these stories is a universe unto itself, filled with brilliant minds, powerful enemies, mysterious circumstances, and the lingering, haunting question. What if they were right? What if their creations were real? Why, then, are we not living in that better world today? This is a journey into the graveyard of progress, a search for the ghosts of what we've lost. So dim the lights, settle in, and listen closely to the echoes of a future that was stolen from us. Our first stop is a place of grand ambition and tragic ruin, a monument to a dream that was too big for its time. We're going back to the turn of the 20th century, a time of feverish invention, of gas lamps giving way to the electric glow. And at the heart of this electric revolution stood 2 titans. Thomas Edison, the pragmatist, the marketer, the man who put a box around electricity and sold it to the world. And then there was Nikola Tesla. To understand the tragedy of Tesla's free energy, you must first understand the man. Tesla was not a mere inventor. He was a poet of physics, a visionary who saw the universe not as a collection of physical objects, but as a symphony of frequencies and vibrations. While Edison was focused on the practicalities of direct current, of stringing copper wires from house to house, Tesla was dreaming on a planetary scale. He had already gifted the world alternating current, or AC, the very system that powers our homes today. But for Tesla, that was just the beginning. It was a stepping stone to his true, magnificent obsession: wireless power. Not just wireless information like radio, but the wireless transmission of electrical energy itself. Imagine it. No more power lines scarring the landscape. No more costly infrastructure. No more monthly bills. Just an endless, clean, and free source of power, broadcast through the earth and the atmosphere, accessible to anyone, anywhere on the planet, with a simple receiving device. It sounds like science fiction even now, but to Tesla it was an engineering problem, and one he was certain he had solved. His grand design was to be embodied in a single, breathtaking structure, the Wardenclyffe Tower, rising 187 feet from the ground in Shoreham, Long Island. It was a marvel of latticed wood and steel, crowned with a 68-foot-wide copper dome. It was to be the first of a global network of such towers, a world wireless system that would be a broadcaster of everything: images, messages, weather information, and most importantly, energy. Tesla envisioned a world where a ship at sea could power its engines by drawing energy from the air, where a remote village in the mountains could light its homes without a single wire connecting it to civilization. He wasn't just trying to build a new power grid. He was trying to unify humanity and eliminate one of the primary sources of conflict and poverty, the scarcity of energy. To fund this Herculean task, Tesla turned to one of the most powerful men in the world, the banking magnate J.P. Morgan. Initially, Morgan was intrigued. He invested what would be the equivalent of over $4 million today. But his interest was primarily in a wireless communication system that could rival the transatlantic telegraph cables, which he had a significant financial stake in. He saw a way to monopolize global communication. He did not, however, see a way to monopolize free energy. And this is where the story takes its dark, conspiratorial turn. According to many accounts, the true nature of Tesla's project was something he revealed to Morgan only after construction was well underway. The apocryphal, yet famous, exchange between the two men captures the core of the conflict. When Tesla explained that Wardenclyffe would provide energy that anyone could tap into, Morgan is said to have asked the simple, world-altering question, "Where can we put the meter?" That question was the death knell for Wardenclyffe. The idea of an unmeasurable, and therefore unprofitable, source of energy was anathema to a man like Morgan and the system he represented. Funding dried up almost overnight. Tesla, desperate, wrote pleading letters to Morgan, explaining the humanitarian potential, the dawn of a new age for mankind. But the letters went unanswered. The financial panic of 1901 sealed Wardenclyffe's fate. Tesla's investors abandoned him, his reputation was smeared in the press, and he was driven into bankruptcy. For years, the magnificent tower stood as a silent, skeletal reminder of his dream, a lone sentinel on the Long Island shore. During World War I, in 1917, the U.S. government ordered it demolished, citing fears that German spies could use it as a landmark or a radio tower. The official story was national security. The reality, for many, felt like the final, brutal act of erasure. The dynamite that brought Wardenclyffe crashing down echoed the destruction of a future. Tesla would spend the rest of his life in a slow, tragic decline, moving from one New York hotel to another, feeding pigeons, and filling notebooks with ideas for technologies that the world was not yet ready for, perhaps that powerful interests did not want the world to have. He died alone and in debt in 1943 in his room at the New Yorker Hotel. Within hours of his death, the story takes another mysterious twist. Agents from the FBI's Office of Alien Property Custodian arrived and seized all of his belongings. 2 truckloads of papers, blueprints, and models were confiscated. The official reason was to search for any sensitive research, particularly related to a rumored particle beam weapon, the death ray, that Tesla had claimed to be working on. But what else was in those documents? Did they contain the complete, workable schematics for a global free energy system? For decades, the contents of these files were classified, fueling speculation that the government had taken Tesla's greatest secret and buried it deep within a vault, far from public view. Skeptics, of course, have a simpler explanation. They argue that Tesla, for all his genius, was a dreamer whose reach exceeded his grasp. That the physics of broadcasting usable amounts of power globally was, and still is, wildly impractical, inefficient, and perhaps impossible. They say J.P. Morgan didn't pull funding because of a conspiracy, but because Tesla was a poor businessman who couldn't deliver on his initial promise of a profitable wireless telegraph. They claim the FBI found nothing of practical value in his notes. And yet, the ghost of Wardenclyffe remains. The question lingers. Was Nikola Tesla's free energy project simply a failed scientific endeavor? Or was it the first and most significant casualty in a hidden war against progress? Did we lose a future of limitless, clean energy not because of the laws of physics, but because of the laws of profit? The evidence is circumstantial, lost to time and sealed in classified files. But the ache of that phantom future, a world powered by the very air we breathe, is a feeling that has never truly gone away. From the ashes of a dream of free energy, we travel forward a few decades, from the cold shores of Long Island to the sun-drenched coast of California. Here, in the 1930s, another lone genius was working on a discovery so profound it promised to eradicate not the darkness in our homes, but the darkness in our very cells. This is the story of Royal Raymond Rife and his alleged cure for cancer. Like Tesla, Royal Rife was a man who saw the world differently. He wasn't a physicist, but a brilliant microbiologist and inventor. And his first great creation was a window into a world no human had ever seen before. In an era when conventional microscopes were limited by the wavelength of light, Rife built something extraordinary: the universal microscope. It was an incredibly complex instrument with thousands of parts, including quartz prisms, that could magnify objects up to 60,000 times their original size. This was revolutionary. For the first time, Rife claimed he could see living viruses, pathogens that were completely invisible to his contemporaries. He developed a technique using light to stain the microbe, causing it to glow with its own unique color, its own specific spectral signature. He was, in essence, seeing the invisible architects of disease. And it was this ability that led him to his most staggering and controversial work. Rife theorized that every microorganism, every virus and bacteria, had a unique resonant frequency, a specific vibrational rate. He called this its mortal oscillatory rate, or MOR. His hypothesis was simple yet elegant, and it has often been compared to the acoustic principle of a singer shattering a crystal glass with their voice. If you could match the glass's resonant frequency with a powerful enough sound wave, the glass would vibrate uncontrollably until it shattered. Rife believed he could do the same thing to a deadly virus. He built a machine to test his theory, a device that became known as the Rife frequency instrument, or simply a beam ray machine. It was designed to generate and broadcast specific electromagnetic frequencies. His goal was to find the precise mortal oscillatory rate for various pathogens and then bombard them with that frequency, destroying them in the body without harming any of the surrounding healthy tissue. After years of painstaking work, Rife claimed to have isolated the frequency that could destroy the herpes virus, polio, spinal meningitis, and others. But his ultimate target was the great scourge of his time, and ours, cancer. He claimed to have isolated a cancer-causing microorganism, which he named the BX virus. He then worked to find its MOR. The culmination of his work allegedly took place in the summer of 1934, at a clinic in La Jolla, California, under the sponsorship of a wealthy patron and a group of local physicians. It has since become a legendary, almost mythical, event in the world of alternative medicine. According to the story, 16 patients with terminal cancer, declared incurable by conventional medicine, were brought to the clinic for treatment with Rife's frequency instrument. They were treated for a few minutes each day. The results, as reported by Rife supporters, were nothing short of miraculous. After 3 months, 14 of the 16 patients were declared clinically cured. The remaining 2 were also declared cured after a further month of treatment, a 100% success rate. A special medical research committee, led by Dr. Milbank Johnson, a respected and influential figure in the Los Angeles medical community, was set up to oversee the clinic and verify the results. A banquet was reportedly held in Reif's honor, celebrating what they called the end of all diseases. It seemed humanity was on the verge of a medical revolution, a new era where cancer and other deadly illnesses could be eliminated with something as simple and non-invasive as a beam of light. And then it all fell apart. Just as with Tesla, Reif's story now descends into a dark tale of powerful enemies and systematic suppression. The antagonist in this story is allegedly the American Medical Association, or the AMA, and its powerful, long-serving head, Dr. Morris Fishbein. In the 1930s, the AMA was consolidating its power, standardizing medical education and practice. This also coincided with the rise of the modern pharmaceutical industry, a non-drug-based, non-surgical cure for cancer, especially one developed by a microbiologist without a medical degree, posed a direct threat to the very foundation of this new and incredibly profitable medical establishment. What followed, according to Reif's proponents, was a deliberate and ruthless campaign to destroy him and his work. Dr. Fishbein allegedly tried to buy the rights to Reif's technology, and when Reif refused, the AMA began to exert its immense influence. Doctors who had been part of the 1934 clinic suddenly denied any knowledge of it. Dr. Milbank Johnson, Reif's biggest supporter, died suddenly in 1944, and all his papers and records on the Reif clinic allegedly disappeared. Other researchers who had corroborated Reif's findings were said to have been threatened with the loss of their licenses and research grants if they didn't fall in line. The story gets even darker. Reif's own laboratory in San Diego was subjected to a series of suspicious events. There were break-ins, crucial photographs, records, and research papers were stolen. Finally, his multi-million-dollar universal microscope was vandalized and parts of his lab were mysteriously burned down in what was officially ruled an arson. The company that was set up to manufacture the Reif frequency instruments was buried in endless, costly litigation until it was forced into bankruptcy. With his research in ruins, his reputation systematically dismantled by the medical establishment, and his supporters silenced, Royal Reif himself began to crumble. He descended into alcoholism and paranoia, a broken man who had seen a miracle and then had it ripped away from him. He died in 1971, obscure and penniless, from a combination of alcohol and Valium. The AMA and mainstream medicine had successfully branded him a charlatan, a quack. His incredible microscope, his frequency generator, and his alleged cancer cure were relegated to the footnotes of history, dismissed as pseudoscience. So what is the truth? The skeptic's view is clear and compelling. The 1934 clinic, they argue, is poorly documented. The primary sources for the 100% cure rate come from Reif's own supporters, not from peer-reviewed medical journals. They point out that Reif's BX cancer virus has never been validated by modern science. The current consensus is that most cancers are caused by genetic mutations, not a single microbe. They say that while some frequencies might affect bacteria, the idea of a mortal oscillatory rate for viruses or cancer cells is biologically implausible. To them, Reif was, at best, a well-intentioned but misguided researcher, and at worst, a fraud. But for those who believe the lack of evidence is the evidence. They argue that the documents were peer-reviewed by the Committee of Doctors, but that those documents were deliberately destroyed. The suppression was so total, so complete, that it left behind only whispers and legends. Today, you can still find people selling modern Reif machines online, though they are dismissed by the FDA and medical authorities. Was the cure for cancer found in a San Diego lab in 1934 and then ruthlessly suppressed by a medical industrial complex afraid of losing its profits? Or is it just a tragic story of a man whose reach, like Tesla's, exceeded his grasp? We may never know for sure. The records are gone. The witnesses are dead. All that remains is the story, and the chilling possibility that for nearly a century, We may have had a key to one of humanity's greatest locks, but someone stole it and threw it away. Our final story takes us across the Atlantic to a place far from the gleaming labs of Tesla or Rife. It takes us to a hairdresser's workshop in Hartlepool, in the north of England, in the 1980s. This is the story of Maurice Ward, an ordinary man who stumbled upon an extraordinary, almost magical, invention. And his creation wasn't a source of energy or a cure for disease. It was a simple, putty-like plastic he called starlight, and it could have made the world fireproof. Maurice Ward was not your typical scientist. He was an inventor in his spare time, a tinkerer who loved to mix things up in his workshop, which was essentially his family's kitchen. The story of Starlight's creation is as humble as its inventor. It began with a tragic accident, the 1985 British Air Tours disaster in Manchester, where 55 people died, most from smoke inhalation, after a fire broke out on the plane. Ward was horrified and decided he wanted to invent a fire-resistant plastic. He began experimenting, mixing a chaotic brew of household ingredients, reportedly over 20 different organic polymers and copolymers, including things like flour, baking soda, and allegedly even his wife's shampoo. He was aiming for something fire-retardant. What he created was something else entirely. He called it Starlight, and its properties were, to put it mildly, unbelievable. To demonstrate his invention, Ward would appear on British television shows like Tomorrow's World and perform a demonstration that left scientists and audiences speechless. He would coat a regular hen's egg in a thin layer of his white, putty-like starlight. He would then take an oxyacetylene blowtorch tool that can cut through steel, reaching temperatures of over 2,500 degrees Celsius, and aim it directly at the egg for 5 straight minutes. The starlight would char and smoke a little, but it wouldn't burn. After the blowtorch was turned off, Ward would simply pick up the egg with his bare hands, crack it open, and reveal that the inside was still completely raw. The yolk was runny. The egg white was clear. The heat had simply not gotten through. The implications were staggering. This wasn't just fire retardant. It was a near-perfect insulator. Think about it. A material that could withstand incredible temperatures could have revolutionized everything. It could have been used to create fireproof shelters and escape routes in skyscrapers. It could have shielded spacecraft during atmospheric re-entry, making space travel infinitely safer and cheaper. It could have protected nuclear power plants from meltdowns and shielded military vehicles and pilots from explosions. The potential was limitless. Naturally, the world took notice. NASA, the UK's Ministry of Defence, Boeing, and numerous other aerospace and technology giants came knocking on Maurice Ward's door. They tested Starlight. The UK's atomic weapons establishment reportedly subjected it to a simulated nuclear blast, and it survived, barely scathed. NASA's tests confirmed its incredible properties. This was the real deal. This was a miracle material. A multi-billion-dollar deal seemed inevitable. And yet it never happened. And the reason, it seems, came down to one man, Maurice Ward himself. Ward was intensely, and perhaps justifiably, paranoid. He had seen what had happened to other inventors. He was terrified that if he sold the formula, these giant corporations would reverse engineer it, patent it themselves, and leave him with nothing. He believed his invention was worth not millions, but billions, perhaps trillions, in its potential to save lives and transform industries. And he refused to let it go for anything less. He would only provide samples for testing, never the formula. He insisted that any deal must include a clause that he would retain a 51% ownership of the technology. He wanted to be a partner, not just a seller. The corporations, used to buying patents outright, balked at his demands. Negotiations dragged on for years. Ward would claim a deal was close only for it to fall through. He became more and more secretive, more and more protective of his creation. He claimed he had taught the formula only to a few trusted members of his family, so that it would not die with him. It was a stalemate. The world had a miracle material, but it was locked inside the head of a stubborn Yorkshire hairdresser who didn't trust the world with his secret. He was caught in a tragic paradox. His desire to protect his invention was the very thing preventing it from being used. Then, in May of 2011, Maurice Ward passed away. He was 78 years old, and the formula for Starlight seems to have died with him. His family has remained silent. No corporation has ever come forward to announce they managed to secure the recipe before his death. The putty-like substance that could laugh at a nuclear blast, that could keep an egg raw in the heart of a blowtorch's flame, has vanished. All that's left are a few grainy clips on YouTube from old television shows, a handful of declassified test reports, and the legend of the man who created it. The skeptics in this case have little to work with. The demonstrations are on video. The tests by credible organizations like NASA are documented. The mystery here is not about the science, but about the human element. Was Ward a brilliant but impossibly stubborn man who let his paranoia get the better of him, thus robbing the world of his genius? Or was his paranoia justified? Were there truly forces at play trying to steal his creation, forcing him into a defensive crouch from which he never emerged? Perhaps the truth is somewhere in between. A story of a working-class man who created something so valuable he was terrified by it, unable to navigate the cutthroat world of corporate technology and intellectual property. Whatever the reason, the result is the same. Starlight is gone. A material that could have saved countless lives in fires, accidents, and disasters exists now only as a ghost. Another phantom limb in our history of what could have been. So here we stand, at the end of our excavation, surrounded by the ghosts of three incredible, world-changing inventions: Nikola Tesla's free energy, Royal Rife's cancer cure, and Maurice Ward's Starlight. Three different men from three different eras with three wildly different creations. And yet, their stories share a chillingly similar arc. A flash of brilliant insight, a promise of a better world, a conflict with the established powers, and a descent into obscurity and loss. It's easy to connect the dots and see a grand conspiracy. A shadowy cabal of bankers, industrialists, and government agents actively suppressing any progress that threatens their power and profits. A secret war being waged in the laboratories and boardrooms of the world, where the future of humanity is held hostage by greed. And perhaps there's truth to that. The story of J.P. Morgan and Tesla, of the AMA and Rife, certainly fits that narrative. The forces of entrenched capital and institutional power have, throughout history, resisted disruptive change. But maybe the explanation is also something a little more mundane, and in a way more tragic. Maybe it's not always a villain in a smoke-filled room, but the simple, grinding realities of human nature. Tesla was a visionary, but perhaps a poor businessman, unable to sell his dream in a world that runs on profit margins. Rife's work, revolutionary as it may have been, was conducted outside the rigorous, peer-reviewed framework of modern science, making it easy to dismiss, whether rightly or wrongly. And Maurice Ward was an ordinary man who created something so extraordinary he was paralyzed by the weight of it. His fear of being cheated ultimately cheating the world of his gift. Perhaps the true enemy isn't a conspiracy, but a tragic combination of human flaws. Greed, yes, but also skepticism, bureaucracy, jealousy, and fear. The fear of the unknown, the fear of being wrong, the fear of losing control. But let's, for a moment, push the skepticism aside. Let's allow ourselves to wonder, what if? What if all three of them were right? What would our world look like today? Imagine a world powered by Tesla's world wireless system. Clean, abundant, and virtually free energy for every person on the planet. The end of fossil fuels. The end of energy poverty that cripples developing nations. A drastic reduction in the geopolitical conflicts fought over oil and gas. A world where the hum of the planet itself is the only power station we need. Imagine that same world, where a diagnosis of cancer is not a terrifying battle for survival, but a treatable condition. Where a patient can sit in a chair for a few minutes a day and have a beam of targeted frequency eliminate the disease from their body, with no surgery, no radiation, no chemotherapy. The fear and devastation that this one disease has wrought upon humanity, simply gone. And imagine this world, this utopia of clean energy and perfect health, is also a world of profound safety, where our homes, our vehicles, our airplanes are coated in a thin layer of starlight, where firefighters can walk through blazing buildings, where astronauts are protected from the searing heat of re-entry, where a catastrophic fire is no longer a mass casualty event. This is the phantom future that haunts us. A world without pollution, without incurable disease, without the terror of fire. Feels so close, so tangible in these stories. And the fact that we are not living in it is a profound and unsettling tragedy. Whether you believe these inventions were suppressed by a powerful elite, or simply lost to the friction of human error and skepticism, the result is the same. They represent a fundamental question we must ask ourselves. Are we capable of recognizing and nurturing our greatest ideas? Or are we destined to let them slip through our fingers, to be buried by the status quo, only to be rediscovered decades later as haunting stories on late-night broadcasts? These three tales are just the tip of the iceberg. History is littered with stories of other suppressed inventions, from water-powered cars to revolutionary building materials. They are the ghosts in our collective machine, the echoes of futures we could have had. And they serve as a warning. The next Nikola Tesla, the next Royal Rife, the next Maurice Ward might be working in a lab or a garage or a kitchen right now. Will we listen to them? Will we support them? Or will we let their dreams be bulldozed, their research burned, and their secrets die with them? The answer to that question will define the world we leave for the generations to come. I want to know what you think. What is the most compelling case of a suppressed invention you've ever heard of? Do you believe these were active conspiracies, or just tragic tales of bad luck and poor timing? The comments section is open. Let's continue this excavation together, because these stories are not just history. They are a map of where we went wrong, and perhaps a guide to how we can get it right. If you find yourself staring up at the night sky, wondering about the world that could have been, about the futures lost and the secrets still buried, then make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. There are so many more uncharted mysteries to explore, and I'll be here, waiting to journey into the dark with you. Thank you for listening.